Saturday, October 15th, 1983. 6:14 in the evening. The Blue Ridge Mountains of western North Carolina have already swallowed the sun whole. Cedar Hollow, a scatter of maybe 240 souls tucked between Beech Mountain and the New River Gorge approach, goes dark early in October. By 6 o'clock, the kitchen windows of the scattered farmhouses along Peavine Creek Road glow a warm amber gold against the pewter sky, wood smoke curling from every chimney. The smell of it, hickory and sourwood, drifts down the hollow like something sacred. The temperature has dropped to 39 degrees since noon. A misting rain has been falling for 2 hours, barely more than a heavy fog that soaks everything it touches. The chestnut fence posts, the late-standing corn, and the asphalt of Old Elk Creek Road, where it narrows to a single lane near the Holcomb property. The last of the leaves are coming off the red maples. Every gust sends a cascade of burnt orange spiraling across the headlights of any car that happens to pass, and few do. Inside the farmhouse at 4117 Peavine Creek Road, Lena Grace Holcomb is standing at her kitchen sink, washing the last of the supper dishes. A hand-me-down radio on the windowsill is playing Dolly Parton's "I Will Always Love You." Lena hums along, slightly off-key, though she would never admit it. She is wearing a burgundy knit turtleneck, faded Levi's, and her brown duck canvas work boots, still laced from earlier in the day when she'd checked on the fence line along the north pasture. Her auburn hair is pinned up loosely with a tortoiseshell clip, and 2 strands falling across her left cheek the way they always do by evening. The supper dishes belong to a family of 3. Herself, her 7-year-old daughter Abigail, and her mother Evelyn. Lina's husband, Raymond, has been working a temporary contract job in Boone all week, carpentry on a new housing development near the ASU campus, and won't be back until Sunday midday. His dinner plate, saved under a cloth in the oven, sits waiting. Abigail is in the living room, 17 feet away, lying on the braided rug with a copy of Encyclopedia Brown and a glass of apple cider. Evelyn has gone to her bedroom down the hall, as she does every evening by 5:30, to read her Bible and sleep. At 6:19 p.m., Lena dries her hands on the kitchen towel, tells Abigail she's going out to check on the chickens and will be back in 10 minutes. It is a routine she has performed 365 days a year for the last 4 years. She puts on her tan Carhartt jacket hanging from the peg by the back door. She steps into the dark. The screen door bangs shut behind her. She does not come back in 10 minutes. She does not come back at all. Before we dive into this haunting story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you love cases solved after decades, don't forget to hit subscribe to stay updated on more stories. Cedar Hollow, Watauga County, North Carolina, in 1983, was a place that time had not so much forgotten as simply overlooked. It sat at 3,400 feet elevation, accessible by 2 roads, Peavine Creek Road and the upper stretch of Old Elk Creek Road, both of which turned to mud in a hard rain. The nearest grocery store was 12 miles east in the town of Boone. The nearest hospital, Watauga Medical Center, was 14 miles. In an emergency, 14 miles on mountain switchbacks is a very long way. The county's permanent population had been declining since the mid-1960s, as young people left for Boone, Asheville, Charlotte, anywhere with a different horizon. Those who stayed were largely farmers and tradespeople, deeply rooted, deeply private. Neighbors helped each other mend fences and bring in hay, but they did not ask questions. Self-sufficiency was not a philosophy in Cedar Hollow. It was simply the fact of the place. Lina Grace Holcomb was born on March 3, 1954, in Banner Elk, Avery County, North Carolina, to Norbert Dale Fulton, a tobacco farmer, and his wife Evelyn May Fulton, née Owensby, and she was the second of 4 children. Her older brother Harold Fulton, born 1951, herself, and younger siblings Clarence Fulton, born 1957, and Deborah Ann Fulton, who died of rheumatic fever at age 4 in 1963. Lena carried her sister's death quietly for her entire life. There was a pressed wildflower in her Bible, placed there the week Deborah died, and never moved. She grew up working. From the age of 8, she helped with tobacco stripping, corn, and the kitchen garden. She was an excellent student at Avery County High School, where she graduated in 1972 with particular distinction in biology and home economics. She was slight but strong, 5 feet, 4 inches tall, 122 pounds, with hazel green eyes that ran more green in summer and more gold in autumn, and the kind of hands that showed work, a small scar on her right palm from a disc harrow, calluses along the inner fingers. Her hair, naturally auburn, had lightened with sun and aged to a warm copper brown by her late 20s. In September 1973, at 19, she married Raymond Dale Holcomb at First Baptist Church in Banner Elk. Raymond was 22, a lean, quiet man who had done a year at the community college before deciding he preferred building things with his hands to reading about them. He was not expressive by nature, but Lena's neighbors would later describe him as steady, loyal, and deeply in love with his wife in the way that some men are. Not with words, but with the consistency of every day. He never missed a birthday. He always brought her tea when she had a headache. He fixed whatever broke. Their daughter Abigail, Ruth Holcomb, was born November 19, 1976. Lena described her own life, in letters to her friend Patricia Mast in Fosco, as not glamorous but full. She kept chickens, 32 laying hens, and 1 rooster she called a general, tended a large kitchen garden, canned vegetables through the summer, made quilts in the winter, and helped her mother Evelyn, who had moved in following Norbert's death in 1979, with the daily rhythms of the household. She had a sharp, dry humor that caught people off guard. She was known for making the best apple stack cake in the Hollow, which she brought to every church potluck without being asked. She was 29 years old on the evening she walked out her back door. October 15th, 1983 began normally. Lena rose at 5:50 a.m., as she always did, and started the wood stove. She fed the chickens at 6:15, cooked oatmeal with dried apples for herself and Abigail, drove Abigail to Cove Creek Elementary School, and returned home by 8:45. Her mother Evelyn, then 63, remembers Lena commenting that she needed to check the north fence because the Holstein had gotten through the wire near the drainage ditch the previous week. She spent most of the morning outside. At noon, she made soup from a ham bone and leftover vegetables. At 2:45, she drove back to pick up Abigail. The rest of the afternoon she spent folding laundry, mending the fence, and starting supper. A pork roast with sweet potatoes, green beans from the last of the canning jars. Nothing unusual, nothing wrong. At 6:14 p.m., supper was finished. By 6:19, Lena Grace Holcomb walked out into the October dark to check on her chickens, or she was never seen alive again. 6:19 p.m., Lena exits through the back door, screen banging shut. The chicken coop is approximately 60 feet from the house, along a worn path through the side yard. The distance should take her 90 seconds to cover. The chickens are locked in the coop each evening before dark to protect them from foxes and black bears, which are common in the Hollow. 6:35 p.m. Abigail Holcomb, then 7 years old, notices her mother has not returned. She goes to the back door and calls out twice. No answer. She returns to the living room and waits, as her mother has told her to stay inside when it is dark. 6:52 p.m. Abigail tells her grandmother, Evelyn Fulton, that Mama hasn't come back in a long time. Evelyn, then 63 and suffering from arthritis in both hips, puts on her coat and steps outside with a flashlight. She calls Lena's name. She finds the chicken coop. The coop door is hanging open, chickens loose in the adjacent wire pen and agitated. The egg-gathering bucket, a grey galvanized metal pail with a bent handle that Lena had used for 4 years, is lying on its side 3 feet from the coop entrance. 7 of the 32 chickens are loose in the yard beyond the pen. General the rooster is gone entirely, found 3 hours later in the corn stubble field 22 yards to the north, which was highly unusual. 7:01 p.m. Evelyn Fulton calls her neighbor, Darrell Blevins, age 51, who lives at 4089 Peavine Creek Road, approximately a quarter mile down the hollow. Blevins arrives at the Holcomb property by 7:11 p.m. in his 1979 Dodge Ram pickup, dark green. He and Evelyn search the immediate property with flashlights for approximately 20 minutes. 7:34 p.m. Darrell Blevins drives to his neighbor's house to use the telephone and calls the Watauga County Sheriff's Office. The dispatcher, Carol Ann Rhodes, logs the call at 7:34 p.m. She sends a deputy to the scene. 7:58 p.m. Deputy Clyde Morrow, age 34, badge number 117, Watauga County Sheriff's Office, arrives at 4117 Peavine Creek Road. He walks the property with Blevins and Evelyn Fulton. He notes the overturned bucket, the disturbed chickens. He notes tire marks in the soft mud of the lane beside the coop. But this lane also leads to the north pasture and is regularly used by Raymond Holcomb's 1977 Ford F-100, rust orange, so no immediate significance is attached. 8:20 p.m. Raymond Holcomb is reached by telephone at the boarding house in Boone, where he is staying. Mrs. Caudle's rooms, 714 Old Bamboo Road, Boone, NC. He is informed that Lena has not returned from the chicken coop. He drives immediately. Given conditions on the mountain roads in the dark and rain, he arrives at the farm at 9:47 p.m., 9:50 p.m. Raymond Holcomb's arrival is later verified by Deputy Morrow and confirmed by Mrs. Eleanor Caudle of the boarding house, who had spoken with Raymond at approximately 8:15 p.m., shortly before he left. His alibi for the time of disappearance is solid. Around 10 p.m., Doris Jean Presnell, age 67, who lives at 4201 Peavine Creek Road, the next farm to the north, contacts the sheriff's office after hearing about the disappearance from her son. She states that at approximately 6:30 p.m., she had noticed headlights on Old Elk Creek Road, the unpaved upper road that parallels the back of the Holcomb North pasture. She had thought nothing of it at the time. The road was occasionally used by hunters during the fall season. The vehicle, she said, appeared to be a light-colored truck, or maybe a van, something bigger than a car, and appeared to stop, or at least slow significantly, near the pasture gate for approximately 3 to 4 minutes before driving on northward. Doris Jean Presnell's observation would become the most significant piece of early witness testimony and would be buried for 40 years. At 11:15 p.m., Sheriff's Captain Hector Brannigan, age 47, arrives at the scene and takes command. He orders the property preserved. A call to Lena's brother, Harold Fulton in Newland, is made by Evelyn at approximately 10:30 p.m. Harold arrives the following morning with his wife Shirley. Lena's other surviving sibling, Clarence Fulton, age 26, is reached the following morning at his apartment in Morganton. The family notification scene, as Raymond Holcomb would later describe it, was a thing without language. He stood in his own kitchen while a deputy explained that they did not know where his wife was. Abigail was asleep by then, or at least in bed. Evelyn was at the table with her hands flat on the oilcloth, very still. Raymond stared at the oven, where Lena's saved dinner plate was still sitting, the cloth still covering it, the food cold. Detective Sergeant Warren Lee Pruitt, age 42, in of the Watauga County Sheriff's Office was assigned lead investigator on Sunday morning, October 16th, 1983. Pruitt was a Boone native who had spent 18 years in law enforcement, 2 with the Boone Police Department, then 16 with the county, and was known among colleagues as methodical, patient, and reluctant to pursue a theory until the evidence demanded it. He was 5 feet 11, heavy-set, with a crew cut going grey at the temples, and the habit of writing his case notes in a green-covered composition book rather than official forms, then transcribing them later. His supervisor, Sheriff James Odell Stamper, trusted Pruitt absolutely. The search effort began at first light on October 16th. In total, the search logged the following resources over a 5-day initial operation from October 16th to 20th, 1983. Day 1, 47 searches, combination of WCSO deputies, Boone PD officers, and community volunteers. Day 2 through 4, averaging 63 searches daily. Total person hours logged, approximately 1,840. Terrain covered, 340 acres of the immediate hollow and surrounding ridgelines. Agencies involved: Watauga County Sheriff's Office, Boone Police Department, Avery County Sheriff's Office, Mutual Aid, North Carolina State Highway Patrol, and the NC State Bureau of Investigations Field Unit out of Asheville. 2 trained search and rescue K-9 units were deployed from the NC Mountain Search and Rescue Team based in Newland. 1 state police helicopter flew grid patterns on October 17th and 18th, logging 6.2 hours of airtime. What the search did not find: Lena Holcomb. No body, no clothing, no physical evidence of her beyond the farmyard itself. The farmyard evidence was minimal, but noted. Detective Pruitt had the following items collected and tagged on October 16th. Evidence item E4703, the grey galvanized egg-gathering pail, found on its side 3.1 feet from the coop entrance. No blood, no fingerprints recoverable from the corroded metal surface. A 4704, a single boot print in the mud beside the coop, left foot consistent with the boot Lena was wearing. Duck canvas work boot, size 7, Carhartt brand. E4705, the chicken coop door latch, a hand-forged iron hook found in the unlatched position. E4706, a partial tire track in the soft mud of the north pasture lane, approximately 7.2 feet from the northwest corner of the coop enclosure. Photographed. Plaster cast attempted. Cast quality was poor due to rain degradation. Track consistent with a wide base commercial or light truck tire, approximately 8.5 inches across at the tread. A 4707, a small piece of cream-colored synthetic fabric caught on the barbed wire strand of the north pasture gate. Lena was not wearing cream-colored clothing that evening. Collected and sent to the NC State Crime Lab in Raleigh. The cream-colored fabric, E4707, was tested at the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation Crime Laboratory, Raleigh, NC. Analysis completed November 3, 1983. Result: nylon polyester blend, consistent with upholstery fabric or a light cargo liner. Not a garment. No blood, no fingerprints. No match to any known vehicle fabric in the state inventory at the time. The report was filed. It would sit in the evidence box for 4 decades. Witness interviews were conducted between October 16th and November 10th, 1983. Detective Pruitt interviewed 21 individuals. Several are of note. Doris Jean Presnell, age 67. Her account of the light-colored vehicle on Old Elk Creek Road at approximately 6:30 p.m. was taken by Deputy Morrow on the night of October 15th. Pruitt re-interviewed her on October 17th. She was specific. The vehicle had paused near the pasture gate for 3 to 4 minutes. She could not describe the make or model with certainty. Her kitchen window looks out northeast, and the road was obscured by the ridge. But she was certain it was bigger than a passenger car. She said the headlights were widely spaced, suggesting a truck or van, and the vehicle appeared to be a pale color. She said cream or white or light tan. Detective Pruitt's notes read, possibly significant, no corroboration. Franklin Earl Buchanan, age 58, and who operates the feed and hardware store in Cedar Hollow. He told Pruitt that on the morning of October 14th, the day before the disappearance, he had seen an unfamiliar vehicle, a light-colored van, he said, with out-of-county plates, parked on the shoulder of Old Elk Creek Road near the Holcomb pasture turnoff for approximately 20 minutes. He had assumed it was a hunter. He had not thought to mention it until he heard about Lena going missing. His account was taken October 18th. He could not remember the plate number or state of issue. Virgil Oakes, age 39, a part-time logger who worked tracks on the North Ridge. He told investigators he had seen a man he did not recognize on October 12th, 3 days before the disappearance, walking the upper fence line of the Holcomb North pasture from the Old Elk Creek roadside. And he described the man as white, medium build, wearing a dark canvas jacket and a grey wool cap. He had not thought anything of it at the time, assuming the man was a neighbor checking on fencing. Pruitt noted this in his composition book. The investigation would later focus elsewhere. Suspect theories developed by early November 1983. Theory 1. Domestic violence/husband involvement. Raymond Holcomb was the first person considered, as spouses always are. His alibi, documented at Mrs. Cordell's boarding house in Boone, was verified by 3 independent witnesses. Mrs. Eleanor Cordell confirmed he had been in his room from 5:15 p.m. until she spoke with him at 8:15 p.m. A fellow boarder, Henry Creed Shuford, had eaten dinner with Raymond at the boarding house dining table at 6 p.m. Raymond was administered a polygraph examination on October 22nd by the SBI. He passed. Raymond Holcomb was cleared and never seriously suspected thereafter. Theory 2. Transient or opportunistic crime. Given the rural mountain setting and the evidence of a vehicle on Old Elk Creek Road, investigators considered that Lena may have been the victim of a stranger, either a passing transient or someone who had specifically surveilled the property. The 3 witness accounts, Presnell, Buchanan, Oakes, of an unfamiliar light vehicle in the days preceding the disappearance supported this. Without a vehicle description or plate number, however, no meaningful pursuit was possible. Theory 3. Voluntary disappearance, briefly considered and quickly dismissed. Neighbors, family, and every person who knew Lena Holcomb described her as deeply rooted, content, and devoted to Abigail. She had made no unusual financial transactions, had not packed any belongings, had left her wallet, containing $14 and her driver's license, on the kitchen counter. She had left the oven on. She had left her daughter. Every investigator who examined the evidence agreed. Lena Grace Holcomb did not leave voluntarily. By late November 1983, the investigation had effectively stalled. The SBI field unit withdrew on November 14th. Detective Pruitt continued to work the case through December, re-interviewing witnesses and sending inquiries to neighboring counties about missing persons and unidentified remains. No body was ever found. No arrest was made. The case was officially classified as inactive open on January 10th, 1984, meaning no further active investigation was being conducted, but the case was not closed. The evidence boxes, 2 banker's boxes, and 1 sealed evidence bag containing E4703 through E47 07 were placed in the Watauga County Sheriff's Office evidence vault. Detective Pruitt retained his personal composition books. Raymond Holcomb stayed on the farm until 1989, when he sold the property and moved with Abigail to his sister's place in Newland. He never remarried. His daughter Abigail would later say in a newspaper interview that her father kept a photograph of Lena on the mantelpiece in every house he lived in until his death. He died of a cardiac event on March 8, 2011, at age 60. He never received an answer. Evelyn Fulton, Lena's mother, lived until 1997. She was 77. She is buried in the cemetery at New River Baptist Church in Cedar Hollow, not far from where the farm once stood. She attended Sunday services every week until she could no longer walk and reportedly lit a candle for Lena at the beginning of every December, which she called Lena's Month, without further explanation. Her obituary does not mention Lena's disappearance. Some things are too large for an obituary. Abigail Holcomb grew up, attended Appalachian State University in Boone, and became an elementary school teacher in Wilkes County. She married at 24, had 2 children, and maintained, throughout her adult life, a quiet but persistent effort to keep her mother's case alive. In 1994, she wrote letters to the Watauga County Sheriff's Office, the SBI, and the State Attorney General. As in 2001, she submitted an inquiry to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Adults, as the case had been filed both as a missing person and a potential homicide. She received form letter responses. Detective Warren Pruitt retired from the Watauga County Sheriff's Office in February 1998 after 32 years in law enforcement, 15 of which had been spent carrying the Holcomb case, among others, in the back of his mind. He reviewed the case file once more on his last day at the office, sitting alone in the evidence room for approximately 40 minutes. He told his colleague, now Lieutenant Carol Blevins, on his way out, "I know somebody out there knows exactly what happened to Lena Holcomb. I never figured out who." He moved to Lenoir. He died of lung cancer in October 2009. Technology in 1983 was simply not capable of working with what little physical evidence existed. DNA analysis as a forensic tool did not exist in practice until 1986 in the UK, and was not routinely used in US criminal investigations until the early 1990s. Genetic genealogy, the use of consumer DNA databases to identify unknown individuals or their relatives, did not exist until 2018. The cream-colored fabric from evidence item E4707, lacking any biological material, seemed at the time to offer nothing further, and the tire track cast was too degraded to produce a useful impression. The case received occasional brief mentions. A 1994 feature in the Watauga Democrat newspaper ran on the 11th anniversary, under the headline, "Family Still Seeks Answers in 1983 Disappearance." A 2003 segment on a local Boone television station's cold case feature also mentioned Lena's name. Neither produced new leads. The evidence boxes remained in the vault. The case number WCSO-83-1415 remained in the inactive file. In the spring of 2021, the Watauga County Sheriff's Office created a formal cold case unit, one of a number of small county units established across North Carolina in response to a 2020 state legislative directive allocating funding for cold case review. The unit consisted of 2 investigators, Detective Sergeant Ramona Faye Callahan, age 38, and Detective Corporal Justin Earl Story, age 31. Callahan had 10 years in the department. The Story had come from the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office and had training in digital forensics and familial DNA investigation. They were assigned 17 open cases. Lina Grace Holcomb's file, WCSO-83-1415, was one of them. Callahan reviewed the original case file in June 2021. She read every page. She read Detective Pruitt's composition book transcriptions, which had been included when his files were donated to the department by his family following his death. She noted, as Pruitt had, the 3 witness accounts of an unfamiliar, light-colored vehicle. She noted the cream-colored fabric from E4707. And then she found something that, in 4 decades of the case being reviewed by at least 6 different investigators, no one had fully followed up on. In Pruitt's original October 18, 1983, an interview notes with Franklin Earl Buchanan, the hardware store operator, was this detail, buried in the middle of a paragraph. Subject states vehicle had a decal or marking on the rear panel, possibly a logo or text. Could not read from distance. Said it was circular, dark color, maybe blue or green, and approximately the size of a dinner plate. A circular decal on a light-colored van. In October 1983, in the original 1983 investigation, no one had cross-referenced this with any business agency or fleet vehicle registry. The detail had simply sat in the notes, flagged but unresolved. Detective Callahan pulled the 1983 NC Division of Motor Vehicles commercial fleet records for Watauga and adjacent counties. These records, she discovered, had been digitized and archived by the State Archives in Raleigh in 2014. So through a records request completed in August 2021, she obtained the archived fleet registrations for Watauga, Avery, Mitchell, Ashe, and Caldwell counties for the years 1978 to 1985. She was looking for light-colored vans registered to businesses or individuals with a circular logo. It was tedious work. There were 847 registered vans across those 5 counties in the search window. Meanwhile, Detective Story had sent evidence item E4707, the cream-colored fabric swatch held in the original sealed evidence bag for 38 years, to the North Carolina State Crime Lab for updated analysis. This time, the request included a molecular fiber composition analysis, specifically looking for any trace biological material that might have survived the decades of storage in the sealed bag. The lab reported back in September 2021. The nylon polyester blend was consistent with van cargo liner material manufactured between 1975 and 1985 by a company called Howell Kincaid Interiors of High Point, NC. More significantly, this was the breakthrough. The lab found 2 intact human skin cells trapped within the fiber weave of the fabric, preserved by the sealed storage conditions and the cool, dark environment of the evidence vault. 2 cells, 38 years old, but intact enough for a partial DNA profile. The DNA profile extracted from those 2 cells was a male individual. It was uploaded to the North Carolina DNA database in November 2021. No hit. It was then uploaded to CODIS, the FBI's Combined DNA Index System. No direct hit, meaning the individual was not in the criminal database. And Detective Story then submitted the profile through Othram, Incorporated, a Texas-based laboratory specializing in forensic investigative genealogy. The same technique used to identify the Golden State Killer in 2018. Othram used the partial profile to generate a more complete genomic sequence and ran it against GEDmatch and other consumer DNA databases. In January 2022, Othram returned a report. The DNA profile had a strong match, estimated third-degree relatives, to individuals in the GEDmatch database with the surname Ledford, from Caldwell County, NC Callahan, and Story built the family tree from that anchor. They traced the Ledford lineage across 3 generations, identifying every male descendant who would have been between the ages of 20 and 50 in October 1983. The list narrowed to 9 individuals, and cross-referencing with the fleet vehicle records Callahan had been working through simultaneously, one name appeared in both: Gordon Elwood Ledford, born August 17, 1943, who had operated a small appliance repair and delivery service, Ledford Home Services, out of Granite Falls, Caldwell County, North Carolina, with a registered 1980 Ford Econoline cargo van, color white with the company logo on the rear panel. A circular logo in navy blue and green. The aha moment, as Callahan later described it to the Watauga Democrat, came in February 2022, when she obtained the old Ledford Home Services service records through a Caldwell County Courthouse record search. Gordon Ledford service route records for October 1983 showed scheduled service calls in Avery and Watauga counties during the week of October 10th to 15th, including a route that would have taken him along Old Elk Creek Road. He had been there, right there, 3 times in the week before Lena Holcomb disappeared. Gordon Elwood Ledford was 78 years old in February 2022. He had been retired since 2003. He lived at 1407 Warrior Creek Road, Lenoir, Caldwell County, North Carolina, in a manufactured home on a 2-acre lot he shared with his wife of 41 years, Wilma Jean Ledford, née Hartley. They had 2 adult children. He was described by his neighbors as quiet and unremarkable. He drove a 2014 Chevrolet Silverado, dark gray. He attended First Assembly of God in Lenoir most Sundays, when his hip allowed. He had no criminal record. And Detectives Callahan and Story obtained a court order requiring Gordon Ledford to provide a buccal DNA swab, which was executed by Caldwell County Sheriff's deputies on February 28, 2022. Ledford submitted without protest, appearing puzzled. The swab was analyzed at the NC State Crime Lab using priority processing. The result returned March 9, 2022. Full profile match to the DNA extracted from evidence item E4707. Gordon Elwood Ledford was arrested at his home at 7:15 a.m. on March 17, 2022. He was taken into custody by Detective Callahan, Detective Story, and 2 Caldwell County Sheriff's deputies. His wife Wilma stood on the porch of their home in a housecoat, watching, saying nothing. A neighbor later reported she stood there for nearly 10 minutes after the cruiser pulled away before going back inside. During his interrogation at the Watauga County Sheriff's Office, conducted by Callahan and Story over the course of 4 hours on March 17th, Gordon Ledford initially denied any knowledge of Lena Holcomb. When Callahan presented the DNA match, the fleet records, and the route logs, he fell silent for a long interval. Then he said, quietly and without expression, "I didn't go there meaning to hurt anybody." He had noticed Lena Holcomb 2 weeks earlier on one of his route drives through the hollow. He had returned 3 more times before the 15th, watching the property from Old Elk Creek Road. He could not explain, when pressed, what he had intended. In the language of the forensic psychologist who later evaluated him, Dr. Patricia Odom, Ph.D., Appalachian State University, he presented classic predatory surveillance behavior, often associated with individuals with sexual sadism disorder, who do not self-identify as criminals until confronted with irrefutable evidence of their actions. On the evening of October 15, 1983, he had parked on Old Elk Creek Road when he saw Lena cross the yard alone in the dark. He had come through the north pasture gate. She had not had time to call out. He had put her in the van. He told investigators, in a flat voice, that he had driven north on Old Elk Creek Road and then west on NC 194 and then onto Forest Service roads in the Pisgah National Forest. He would not say what happened next in any detail. He said he had left her in the woods on the mountain. He said he did not remember precisely where. He said this in the same tone of voice a person might use to say they could not remember where they had left their keys. Now, Lena Grace Holcomb's remains were never recovered, despite a 2-week search of the Pisgah National Forest coordinated by the NCSBI, the U.S. Forest Service, and Watauga and Avery County search teams in April 2022. The terrain is some of the most densely forested in the eastern United States. Investigators believe recovery is unlikely after nearly 4 decades. Gordon Elwood Ledford was charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and forcible rape. He was prosecuted by Watauga County District Attorney Lynn Elaine Bowman, age 53, a veteran prosecutor with 22 years in the DA's office. The defense was handled by attorney Marcus T. Covington of Boone. The trial ran from September 12th to September 24th, 2022. Key evidence included the DNA match from E4707 of the Ledford Home Services route logs, placing his vehicle on Old Elk Creek Road on October 13th and 14th, and circumstantially on the evening of October 15th. The testimony of Franklin Earl Buchanan, age 97, testifying via video link from an assisted living facility in Blowing Rock. Still sharp, still certain about the circular logo, and the forensic genealogy report from Othram Incorporated. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 11 minutes. On September 24th, 2022, Gordon Elwood Ledford was found guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping. He was sentenced on November 3rd, 2022, to life in prison without the possibility of parole by Superior Court Judge Harold W. Penland of the 24th Judicial District. Abigail Ruth Holcomb was present in the courtroom for every day of the trial. She was 45 years old. On the day of sentencing, she read a victim impact statement. She said, among other things, "My mother made apple stack cake that people still talk about. She hummed songs off key and didn't know it. She told me once that the mountains don't move. People think they do, but they don't. And that if you want to know where you are in the world, you just look up and find your ridge. I have been looking for her ridge my whole life. Today I found it. I want her to be able to rest now." Detective Ramona Callahan wept in the parking lot after the verdict. She told Detective Story afterward, "Every single piece of evidence was there in 1983. We just didn't have the tools." The community of Cedar Hollow, what remains of it, as many of the original families have moved on, responded with a mixture of grief, relief, and something complicated. The knowledge that a neighbor had harbored this secret for nearly 40 years. A small gathering was held at New River Baptist Church on October 15th, 2022, the 39th anniversary of Lena's disappearance. A mountain ash was planted at the church cemetery in her memory. There was cake, apple stack cake, made from Evelyn Fulton's handwritten recipe, which Abigail has kept folded in her Bible next to a pressed wildflower. There is a particular cruelty in the long cold case, not only in the crime itself, but in the years of silence that follow. The living must continue living with the wound open. Lena Grace Holcomb's daughter grew up, grew old, and grew older still, always with the absence of her mother's face as a kind of gravity. Her father died without knowing. Her grandmother died without knowing. And the man who knew, who had known every single day for 39 years, drove past his neighbors and went to church, and grew old in his own house as if nothing had happened. What the science gave back, in this case, was not justice in any simple sense. Lina's body has not been found. She cannot be buried. But the science gave back the truth, and the truth gave Abigail the ability to finish the sentence that had been hanging incomplete in her life since she was 7 years old and standing at the back door in the dark, calling for her mother. Lena Grace Holcomb loved mountains and chickens and apple stack cake and a daughter she clearly adored. She hummed Dolly Parton off-key. She kept a pressed wildflower for a sister she had lost at age 9. She was 29 years old. She mattered, and she matters still. Modern forensic science, genetic genealogy, preserved trace evidence, digitized records, does not undo evil. But it is, in its own patient way, relentless. More than 40 other cold cases in North Carolina alone have been solved since 2018 using forensic genealogy techniques. For every family still waiting, the science is improving. The databases are growing. The tools are getting sharper. If someone knows something about a case that has gone quiet, a vehicle seen on a rural road, an unfamiliar face, a neighbor's silence that was always slightly too complete, it is never too late to say so. It is never too late for the truth to do its work. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to stay with us for our next story.